So, hello again, and today I wanted to talk about Partygate, Boris Johnson, 10 Downing Street, and what's happened recently. I'm now in the UK, in London, in England, and so what's happened is that our government last year in 2021. And I believe it goes back to 2020. Boris Johnson and people that support him and other government members ended up breaching the regulations that they themselves imposed. Now it looks like that they've breached the regulations. It's not once or twice. There are actually 12 investigations. Now, you would think a prime minister that is publicly managing, presenting laws, regulations to the general public in the United Kingdom with respect to the virus and the pandemic. And remember the context. This is a killer virus. They're trying to save the NHS and save lives. And some pretty draconian measures were in place at that time. You had to be in social isolation, you had to be in a bubble, you could only be with your family members or another person. You certainly couldn't socialise, you certainly couldn't go to a party, that sort of thing. Now, what the claims are is that Boris Johnson himself and other senior members within government, other members of people in the civil service, were at 12 parties. I mean, 12 parties. So we're not talking once or twice. And the numbers of people are varying between 10 and 30 and possibly 100. I might have got the 100 wrong, but right. So this isn't, 2 or 3 people. This isn't 2 or 3 people plus guests and or family members. We're talking tens of people. So remember the context. The backdrop is Boris Johnson and fellow government officials had instigated some pretty severe regulations. The ones I've just said, and they themselves were in breach. So I mean, you can just see how the general public might be viewing this. Now also remember, some of the hard edges of the pandemic had people not being able to visit their loved ones in hospitals. I suppose a more severe case, many people weren't allowed to see their dying family members, older family members. People weren't allowed to go to funerals. Some funerals weren't allowed to happen. So the context is pretty dire. Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, was on television telling people, you can't do this, you can't do that. And in the very same breath, and in one instance the day after, he was at a party in his name, or a person that works directly for him had set up a party. Parties like bring a bottle. I mean, not just let's keep this quiet. It was literally, we're having a party, bring a bottle. Whilst the rest of the country are enduring draconian lockdown measures. But the thing for me isn't that was happening, although that was bad in itself. It's the wider context. Remember, the claim was we were in that the virus was life-threatening. You get the virus, you can die. We're wanting to save hospitals. We're wanting to save Armageddon. So this is the backdrop, and our Prime Minister is on camera, on television, telling everyone this is such a serious situation. We have to beat the virus. We have to be really in self-isolation. We all need to be in self-isolation. You can be at home with your direct family members, but you cannot go out. You cannot socialise. You can't interact with other people. And at the very same time, he himself and other government people were actually, in the light of the regulations and the rules that they had imposed, they simply decided to break them and have a party. So it either means that they simply didn't believe what they were saying about the virus and how deadly it was, or they believed that they were immune from this virus and the rest of the country weren't immune. So they had some magic situation that allowed them to not catch the virus, or the whole thing was a joke. They thought it was a joke, so there was no risk, so they could party anyway. But you can see that what it means is something is deeply, deeply wrong. It just opens up the question, what on earth was going on? Were these draconian measures really needed? If these people that at the top of government, who you would expect would be highly informed as to the seriousness of the virus, you would think they themselves would have been concerned and scared, and maybe, willing to self-isolate, willing to go home. You would think the idea of a party, if this killer virus was out there and the risks of catching the virus, spreading the virus was so great, you would think that they would be not interested whatsoever in going to a social event. But as we now are learning, there were many events. And these people that were creating and imposing the regulations themselves weren't that bothered about it. I mean, they weren't that bothered to a great extent, an extent where bring a bottle and party, literally. I'm not making this up. And for me, it really shines, this is part of a wider discussion about the whole thing. If we go back to the beginning of the pandemic, we never had consensus over anything. We never had consensus over how dangerous it was, what the outcomes would be, measures to avoid it, measures to manage it, what the remedies might be, what the solutions were. The whole time we've just been handed draconian measures, the whole time. And anyone that has argued against them or offered other scientific advice in contradiction to these measures was simply shut down, censored, or removed. So from the very beginning, it's been, this is a virus that's been presented. You are subject to it and all the measures without question. And it's been crazy. What's happened in the world has been crazy. We've never seen anything like this. And the other interesting aspect the whole way along is the coordination amongst countries, in particular the Five Eyes nations, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England and North America, the US. They've always been in sync. I would say that New Zealand, Australia have suffered the most ridiculous draconian measures that I can think of. But it has been, actually, I must pause right there. That is a cup of coffee that I'm just going to grab. Stay right there. And I'll just come back on camera and I'll pour my coffee. I'd forgotten that I'd switched that on, but not to worry. So again, okay, so it's been 2 years. We've all been party to this now for 2 years, and it's so boring and dull that I think a lot of people, let it pass them by. It's something that you've just, got on with. And now it appears COVID's over because every country that you hear of is reducing their COVID measures, or they're completely scrapping all of them. The UK has just basically done this. We don't have any COVID measures now, not forced, legal, imposed COVID measures. things are pretty much back to normal. Now, if you do have the virus, the advice is you self-isolate and that sort of thing. But once again, I think, and that's if, you've tested and you have the virus. A lot of people are asymptomatic, they don't have symptoms. But what has really happened is that everyone is tired and fed up to a point where apathy sets in and people are literally forgetting about it and just moving on and getting on with their life. And this is a natural thing. And, this is fine and this might be the best way forward. But I really believe that the last 2 years has been unbelievable. And I don't believe it's been right or just. And I don't believe that the best outcomes have happened. And I think there are some serious ramifications, some very socially damaging ramifications, financial ramifications also. And this should really be justified. But it should have been justified at the very beginning. And we should have had trust and faith in the legal process and in our governments from the beginning. But what very quickly happened is that people didn't trust and questioned what was going on. And today we're still questioning it and we still don't trust or believe it. In fact, I would say the trust has got much less. It really has separated and divided society. People I know that, in fact, most people I know, are filled with doubt these days. And I think everyone is thinking, hold on, do we need to look at our governments a little more closely? Do we really trust our governments? Is what's happened right? Wow, what has happened? We've been locked up for 2 years. And now we find out that the people that locked us up had parties during that time. What does this mean? And what I think it does mean is that something has been deeply wrong from the very beginning. Questions like the origin of COVID seem to have been brushed aside and not of importance, where in actual fact, the origin of COVID is of utmost importance. It means everything. The origin of COVID-19 proves the ramifications and justifies the measures that were taken. But no government really wants to talk about it. It's like it's just there and we got on with it. But in the US, in their media system, not the mainstream media, but other media, they have spent months and months talking about the origin of COVID-19, pointing to the very, very likelihood that it was man-made. Now, if COVID-19 was man-made, that means that if it was released intentionally, that is an attack on people. And so the last 2 years and everything that's happened has been the consequence of an attack that led to people dying. Straight away, legal words like manslaughter or murder appear. So the origin of 19 is of utmost importance, and I find it unbelievable that governments, they are hiding the discussion, they're hiding the word. If in the UK, if you say origin of COVID in a political context or legal context or a government context, it just goes over people's heads. They're not interested. But I cannot believe this. They're not interested in one of the most important aspects of the last 2 years. Very quickly, all you can do is draw a conclusion that something is very wrong here. We hear the conspiracy theories, and yes, there are some crazy conspiracy theories out there. But what occurs to a lot of people, and what occurs to me, is that these conspiracy theories are now starting to hold a lot more water. They're a lot more believable because they make an awful lot more sense of what's gone on than what the news media has been telling us. That there is something possibly sinister here. There is something underhand here. And the reason why that we are believing this or starting to want to know more about him is because what we have been told over here by the news media makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't help you understand. It doesn't justify anything. It's like the last 2 years has been this whirlpool of absolute nonsense, or of a twilight zone. Everyone be locked up. The consequences of that socially have been terrible. Medically, health-wise, that they've been terrible because of all the missed other health-related appointments and situations that have occurred because of the COVID-related lockdowns. Anyway, you can see where I'm going, and I thought, this is unbelievable. Party Street, 10 Downing Street, Boris Johnson, the very people that were imposing regulations on the general public themselves were disobeying those regulations, which meant they either believed that the rules didn't apply to them, or the rules didn't apply to them and the risks weren't as they were claiming, or the whole thing was a joke and they were exempt from the rules, or they'd forgotten about the legislation and the regulations. But you can see here something is deeply wrong. And today, watching and listening to the news, it would appear that Boris Johnson has got away with it. The fact that he broke his own rules, his own legal rules, it's not really a problem. Now, I could speculate right now, and maybe for what I'm about to say, this video could be censored, taken down, so I perhaps won't say that, but it's just plain to see that something is deeply wrong in this world right now. And we are talking about all the major governments around the world. I don't think we're being told the truth. I don't think we were told the truth. I think what's gone on is highly questionable. And I think there will be a lot of reflective thought by a lot of people about the last 2 years. And I don't think we've heard the end of it. I think there's more to come. And I think the truth has to be known, because we are supposed to live in a civilized, democratic world. Today, I don't believe we live in a democratic world, for sure. Civilized is debatable. I mean, in society, you're always going to have, bad things, but that's another conversation. But the point I'm making is something is deeply wrong, and we shouldn't just be putting it under the carpet and hiding it, which is what we're doing. Because I want to get to the end of this video, I'm trying to find a positive. I suppose the positive is that maybe some positive will come out of this. Maybe on reflection, we will be thinking about restructuring things. Maybe we can improve government. I mean, we definitely know we can improve government, because government right now isn't working. Government right now applies plasters onto gaping wounds that they know are a very short-term temporary fix. And they always benefit the establishment and the already wealthy. We know that. So making improvements in government shouldn't be that difficult, because it is so bad right now. So I think that is the one of the conclusion I want to get to. And for some reason, I keep thinking about the Great Reset and Build Back Better. And I think maybe we should have a Great Reset and we should build back better, but not the recipes, not the formula that the people have in mind that have got the news media to offer those claims. I think we should take a look at the Great Reset and Build Back Better, and perhaps offer our own ideas of what that should be and what it should look like. So I suppose the positive here is, yes, we can now reset our view and build back better than what was planned. I'm trying to think of a logo, a catchy logo, but I can't think of anything. Anyway, I am going to now drink my coffee and switch off these cameras, and hopefully this take will be good enough and I can post it. And I hope I haven't rambled too much. I hope this is of some use to someone, and I hope it's not censored. I hope it's not taken down. But you never know. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I will see you again.